Welcome to Holistic Wisdom Live. My name is Elena, and I have a very special guest today, Gianni Colorni. Today's topic is on the science and wisdom of Kabbalah. I'm sure many of you have lots of questions like I do. So first, I'll give you an introduction into Gianni, and then we'll start with questions. So bio on Gianni is fresh out of college. He worked for U.S. government in a top secret capacity. Interesting. Realizing that his life's purpose and secrets of the universe could not be found there, he traveled the world from India to Israel, searching for meaning of life, before finding a master Kabbalist who opened the ancient wisdom of Kabbalah to him. For the past 15 years, he has been studying and teaching this method to students worldwide. He has created courses like Emergent Universe and the Structure of Creation for the Kabbalah learning platform, KabU, K-A-B-U. A graduate from Columbia University and UC Santa Barbara, he holds a Master of Science degree in education and teaches mathematics. Fascinating background. I love it. So thank you so much, Gianni, for being here.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Yes. Can you please first explain why is the Kabbalah called science? Because I'm very curious why people reference it as science and, of course, the ancient wisdom. So if we can kind of start with that, what is the science of Kabbalah?
Well, because it's a science, it's not a religion, it's unrelated to religion. It's a science that started, let's say, 3,800 years ago with Abraham. And Abraham was just a regular person. His father was Terach, and he was what's called, he was like a priest back in this time. And Abraham, like many of us, started asking the basic question, what is the meaning of my life? And from this search, he started researching reality. And in researching reality, he discovered, after much inner work, he discovered an upper force. He discovered an upper force that he could only call creator. Because one who researches reality and discovers the depth of it and opens it up finds that there is a singular force that is governing us, governing all of reality, depicting what we're experiencing in our lives, and depicting it in this kind of broken way, as if it's governed by many different forces. And I need to deal with each one of them: my boss, my wife, my kids, the police department. And one who opens up reality in this way discovers that it's actually all coming from one place. And this he called the creator. And he started, because there were no restrictions on who could study back then. There wasn't such a thing as a Jewish person yet. And he invited everybody from ancient Babylon, those who came with him, who agreed to be his students. They were called Yashar Kel, which we call Israel now, right? So they were called Yashar Kel, from the words that mean straight to the creator, meaning we're all heading towards the creator. All of reality is actually moving us in this direction of the discovery of the only reason we're living in this world, which is to discover this secret hidden force that wants to be discovered. So we're all headed there, but pretty much in a painful way. So Yashar Kel means direct to the creator. I want to discover him in this lifetime while I'm still alive. And he had a method for doing so. He advertised it to all of the Babylonians. Those who wanted to come ended up following him. They later went to the land of Canaan, and they practiced this special method, this method of connection. It's a science because there are specific internal moves that I need to make in order for it to happen that are actually contrary to anything I would normally imagine in my nature. And later on, of course, we know the story that they were in the rule, love your friend as yourself. Every kindergarten, at least in Israel, and in other places probably, has this on their wall. love your friend as yourself. But there's much to this. And in this law, we actually discover this quality that Abraham taught. This is why Rabbi Akiva says, love your friend as yourself is the main rule of the Torah. And all the rest are just the details of this law. During this time, the time of Rabbi Akiva, let's say it's 2,000 years ago, during this time, they fell into unfounded hatred and still having this, what we call in Kabbalah, a reshimo, this internal gene, this record of the attainment of the Creator. They all split and went off into the world, except for a very tiny group called Kabbalists. And the rest kind of went off in the world and just disappeared, kind of melted in. So this is the roots of the wisdom of Kabbalah. Now it's mixed with all kinds of other things, but at its essence, it is a science. So if you want to ask, you can ask. If you want me to just continue, I can go.
Yeah, no, you know, it makes me actually think something. There's a realization that I had, and I was curious about it. Is it the same time when the Kabbalah, the science of Kabbalah emerged, then the Egyptian mystery schools also came out? Because I'm curious if it was all part of the same root. And is it also the root of the Essenes? You know, you've heard of the ancient Essene groups, right? If it's also, because I've had this aha moment a couple of times over the last year, if this was really part of the same.
Well, I'm not an ancient Egypt expert, but I can say the following, that in reality, there are two trends. There's the trend that comes from the wisdom of Kabbalah, out of which, and the historians can argue about it as much as they want, but it comes from the wisdom of Kabbalah and the Hebrew as well. And it's also written that Abraham sent his sons east with his wisdom. So this is why all of the wisdoms of the world, the major religions, of course, come out of the wisdom of Kabbalah. And so two trends, right? One trend is the wisdom of Kabbalah and its parts, the parcels that come out of the wisdom of Kabbalah, that part of it is split off, and you can make an entire philosophy or an entire religion out of it. The other approach is actually that of Tarek. It's the idea that there are multiple gods and there's not one singular force that's governing reality, but I need to worry about the god of rain and the god of the Nile and the god of thunder and my wife and my boss and my kids. And these are all different forces that are working on me. So these are the two general approaches. And then there's thousands and thousands that fall into each one.
Okay. Does one need to speak and understand how to read Hebrew in order to study the Kabbalah?
It's the other way around.
Huh?
That Hebrew is a geometric representation of what a person discovers when they do the method that we just talked about.
Okay.
That this is why there's this custom that it's called, you know, everyone must write their own Torah. And there's a custom of actually going and literally each kid would write their own Torah. What it means is that, what it means is that when I perform this internal action by which I reveal the upper force, I actually go through this process. It starts with a point, with the tip of the first letter, and it expands. And through this, we get the 22 letters. And this is why the Torah actually never changes. If you take any other book, you know, you can see its incarnations throughout the centuries. The Torah, as it is written now, is exactly the way it was written when it was written. So each and every person discovers that this entire Torah is inside of him. And I'll read a quote here from Rav Menachem Mendel of Kosk. He says, "We innovate nothing. Our work is only to illuminate that which is hidden within a person." So what a person discovers is that besides this personality that I think is me and the qualities that I know about myself, I also have within me all of these things. The whole story of Abraham opens up, the story of Moses, the people of Israel exiting Egypt and finally arriving at Israel, discovering all these laws. So all of these are found within the person, not just the stories, but each and every letter, the building of each and every letter. These letters are the way that I use my desires, all of my desires in me, and not that I just restrict my desires down to some pretty nice desires that I think are good and nice, but rather all of the desires that were given to me come from the Creator, only they need to go through this transformation process called Simsum, restriction, Masak, screen, and Or Hoser, reflected light. And the letters are the different forms that the many different desires that I have go through in order to reach equivalence with the Creator, by which I can feel Him.
So the reason I asked you if we need to know how to read in Hebrew is because Book of Torah, and then I also have a question about the Zohar, all the different books of Zohar. I don't remember how many, there's many, over maybe 20, other 20 books of Zohar. Yes, volumes.
Depends how you divide it up, but yeah.
Okay. In order to read the original text, which is written in Hebrew, what do you suggest, like for people, for example, who are curious but they don't know how to read the material? Would you say it's not necessary to know how to read Hebrew, and how does a person start?
It could be a help. It could also be a hindrance, because the Hebrew was developed by a person who is actually attaining the upper world. They were, through the inversion of their desire, they're actually discovering these lines. They're discovering these letters. These letters are the lights. The lights, light is the term that Kabbalists use for pleasure, because basically our whole reality is how to receive pleasure. And the Hebrew letters are vertically the light of Chokmah and horizontally the light of Hasidim. And in their combination, you have these different letters. And this is why Kabbalah is a science, because I use a very specific bit of this desire and that desire. And in their mixture, then I can receive this light. And I have to ensure that I'm using it with the right intention. It's a whole science with numbers. That's why their letters, they also have the gematria. It's a whole science. And so it's a complex question, actually. It seems very simple, but let's just establish that the letters were written about this work that every person is invited to do. And every person ultimately has to do in this lifetime or the next lifetime, because we all have this question of, how can I be happy in life? What will make me happy? If I'll receive, just imagine what you dream about the most. If you dream about having it, how will it make you feel? Ultimately, that how will it make me feel is what I'm seeking. I need a Mercedes. I need a Ferrari. I need food, sex, family, money, power, honor, knowledge, whatever it is I need. I ultimately need that because it's going to activate in me some good feeling, some pleasure. So everything all comes down to the pursuit of pleasure. And if I can't receive the pleasure, if I can't receive the fulfillment, I need some method for how to receive it. And the wisdom of Kabbalah is specifically this method. This is why it's called the wisdom of Kabbalah. It's the wisdom of how to receive. Kabbalah means reception in Hebrew. So it's the wisdom of how to receive. And every person ultimately discovers that they're unable to fulfill themselves as much as they would like in life. And that's why it's written that a person dies with half their lust still in their hands. And so we need this wisdom of Kabbalah, and it applies to each and every person. So every person can start just like Abraham did, where he wanted to discover the meaning of life, which is really the meaning. How do I get fulfilled? That's the question. And they can start discovering these letters inside of themselves. They can discover this initial point, say the tip of the yud, and then they can start drawing it out. But these are internal actions that we don't know how to do. The other way, the other approach, because all our materials are translated into English, right? So it's possible to actually start this method and receive this instruction without knowing Hebrew. If I know Hebrew already, of course, I can read it in its original. It's not a bad thing. But to actually start and to actually feel what the method is talking about and start realizing it, I don't need Hebrew.
Okay. There's two words that you mentioned, and I think a lot of people are not familiar with. You said the vertical and horizontal one was chokhmah, and what was the other one? Can you explain what that means?
Hasidim. So Chokmah is the light of the purpose of creation. That's the light that, and Kabbalists just call, it's actually a very simple science. All there is, and I can even boil it down for you into a formula. Y equals f of x. Okay, so the y in this equation would be light. And the function of x is the desire times the screen. So if I have whatever desire I have, I can correct it and make it so that instead of experiencing a short circuit when the pleasure comes to me, I can actually experience light. And Kabbalists tell us that in our world, we're running around trying to fulfill ourselves with whatever it seems to me that I should be fulfilled with. And every time I come close to the pleasure, it slips through my fingers. So my whole enjoyment is being on the way to pleasure, that I think something as good is coming. But when it gets to me, what happens is like the light bulb, when the plus and minus connect without a filament. And what you get is, instead of yay, you get darkness. So this is what happens with all of the pleasures that I try to reach. And so you have a desire, that's good. You have many desires, that's even better, because you'll be able to fulfill all of these desires. But you need the masak, you need the screen. So to your question, the light is a very general term that we use. However, there are many types of light based on which kind of desire that I have. Now, the direct fulfillment of the pleasure is called chokmah. When I can actually fulfill the desire via, as it's meant in the purpose of creation, which is said to delight the creatures. This is the purpose of life, for us to be delighted, to be contented, to be happy. And Hasidim is the correction of creation, meaning how can I use this desire that I have, but not in a direct way, but in order to bestow. And there could be a lot in that. How do I use a desire that I'm not exactly fulfilling it directly, but I'm receiving a fulfillment, but it's in order to bestow. This is the whole wisdom of Kabbalah.
What is it that you're referring to that's called a screen? What is that?
The screen, put simply, is the intention.
Okay.
So it's that I only have one problem in life and one reason for which I am experiencing this whole painful reality that seems so complex and filled with so many things. And that is that I do not have this intention in order to bestow, because this does not come naturally. If I had the intention to bestow, and an intention is very complex, like a membrane. Like the skin is actually, well, you're a doctor, you know, the skin is the most complex organ. Though it's just skin, it's simple, right? But so in my other five senses, through which I feel myself in a reality, there is a screen in each one of these. According to Kabbalah, all that exists is desire. These are five kinds of desires: desires to hear, to smell, to taste, to touch. In each of these, I would like to directly receive a symphony, but I don't have a membrane there, no eardrum, so no symphony. I would like to taste, but no taste bud. Or I would like to see, but no retina. So I can receive the light directly, right? But there's nothing blocking it, thus paradoxically letting it in. It's the same with the darkness in space. It's completely dark out there, right? Though the sun is shining. But on Earth, we have light. Why? Because there's a membrane that's blocking it. We have the atmosphere that's surrounding our Earth, and thus it's light inside of the atmosphere. Similarly, so in these senses, in my five senses from nature, I have a screen built in. They're desires, actually. But there's a screen in them, and that gives me my whole perception. I have a desire that is much, much greater than these five senses. Inside that desire, there is no screen, and thus there's darkness. And around me is actually a beautiful upper world. I'm already in it. I'm in the upper world. The creator never shattered anything or created any darkness. It's that I'm in an ocean of light. And I have a quote from Rabash here, from the Kabbalist Rabash. He says, abundance itself is similar to a vast sea. Some take from it with a thimble, others with a bucket. So I have this sea around me, and it depends what kind of desire I have. Do I have a small desire or a big desire? But one more important thing, do I have a screen over it? Do I have a corrected desire? So this is the whole problem, is that we all have desires. We need the wisdom of how to receive inside of these. Thus, all I need is to formulate this intention. And this is why the wisdom of Kabbalah is so simple. It's actually so simple that all I need is this intention, and before me, I'll see an infinite upper world, a beautiful, sublime world with the creator, and it's beautiful. So that's all the screen is. It's this intention that we don't get naturally from birth.
So would you say all of the chaos that happens in the world, is it something humanity creates themselves, or is it part of creators' desire also to experience that and therefore to evolve, you can say, to grow as well?
The creator, according to Kabbalah, the creator wants to finish the correction. His goal is to give us infinite abundance and goodness. The only problem is that he created us opposite to him. So, as Bala Sulam says, he is the property of bestowal without a shred of reception. We are the property of reception without a shred of bestowal. All of creation is to bring us into equivalence. Because if he created us like some dog that just sits there, and you want a Coke, Coke's inside you. You want a steak, steak's inside you. This is just a robot, right? So he wanted to fill us with abundance, with goodness. But to do so means to give us the greatest possible gift, and that is to be like him, to be like the creator, with his powers, with his everything. This is the definition of good, and it can't be less than that. And for us to have that, we have to truly be like him, which means being free like him as well. So we need free choice. This reality is created for free choice. And all that we're doing in our reality is the avoidance of creating this relationship with him, that there are other things that we need to do.
So also another question, maybe it's a clarification. You're referencing creator as a he. Is that what the Kabbalah says, or is it more of like a neutral kind of energy consciousness itself? It's not gender specific.
So in Kabbalah, it's just plus and minus, 1 and 0. Like in a computer, you have ones, they do their role. You have zeros, they do their role. Everything is hot, cold, it's cells, electrons, protons. Everything is zeros and ones. We, relative to the creator, and an electrician could probably explain this just as well. So you have the force, that is the giving force, the emanating force, and you have the receiving force. We are the quality of reception. So the one that is giving is called male. We could call it anything. We could make up another word for it. It's called male. And then the receiving force is called female. And we, the creation, are female or minus or 0 towards the creator.
So Earth would also be that, right? The feminine force that receives from the creation, which would be the masculine. So that's how it's interpreted.
Yes.
Why has there been so much mystery shrouding the Kabbalah? Like, there's so much misinterpretation. Some people will say, it's been a mystical, practice for years, and then a lot of misinterpretations and also different variations of it are popping up everywhere.
It's partially because it's a business off which if you can make a lot of money and you can tie absolutely anything to it. And it's very ancient. You don't have a wisdom like that that's very ancient. And then there are a lot of, so when Kabbalists want to talk about the upper reality, that they say that our world is like a mustard seed compared to the entire universe, if we compare our universe to the spiritual reality. So there's an upper reality, the reality of forces from which everything in our world comes, meaning I experience a cup, let's say, because there is an upper force, a force, like in a computer, it's information, but on your screen, because there's this sequence of forces, zeros and ones, therefore you get an image on your screen. And there are forces in this upper world, the world of forces that Kabbalists attain, that are giving rise to our experience of things in our world. There are also, because we have a very limited perception of reality, there are also forces that we don't have anything like that in our world, in our experience. And so and this is all that Kabbalists write about in their books. So when you take some book, like the Book of Zohar, then there, in order to describe the interplay of forces, and this is also what's in the Torah, it's just the interplay of forces. There are no people, no humans. It's a root and branch relationship between the forces and those words that they have to use, because they have to find some language in order to communicate something through which we can then reach the spiritual reality. Now, if you have serious people who want to learn the method of what I'm supposed to do with these books, the way that it would have previously, that was not the case. So previously it was like, if I give, let's say I give a car to some tribe that has never come into contact with human beings. And what do they do with this car? They turn it into a shelter. Great use for it, really good use. That's smart, but it's actually for driving. So I'm not using it for that purpose at all, right? So if I give to people who are not ready to use the Book of Zohar, meaning to understand that it's not something that I'm just scanning or something that I'm putting in my house to prevent a fire, okay, it's not made for that, then they turn it into all sorts of mystical things. And they search in there and they find that they saw a red string. And then so they start actually making physical red strings. They start doing all sorts of things that make it just weird and something that has nothing to do with what is actually for. And by this, they actually distance themselves and humanity from the creator, from the realization that's supposed to happen with this. And that's not good, because it's a very simple method that each person is supposed to do inside them and reveal the upper world. And now, instead of doing that, I'm making all sorts of new customs. And these are like the Terex customs. These are like, you build a doll and you put it in your house. That's what I'm doing with this red string. I'm creating an idol that, instead of relating to the singular upper force of all of reality, about which you cannot make any symbol. This is why Kabbalists are very simple. They don't have different amulets and things like that. So if humanity was during a time when they would have done things like that, which is exactly what they did, because when the Zohar came out, that's when all of the mysticism emerged in the last 500 years, when the public got their hands on it. Then they started making all kinds of businesses with it. And this distances us from the goal of life and actually lengthens the correction time, which is increasingly painful. So that's why Kabbalists, during a certain era of human development, because the desire grows over time until our times, when it realizes that by nothing in this world am I going to be able to fulfill myself. And that's why you can just throw the wisdom of Kabbalah into every bookstore now. And most people really aren't going to be fooled by any kind of fortune telling or red strings. And it's something much more serious. So that's why Kabbalists concealed the wisdom of Kabbalah for thousands of years until roughly our time.
Okay. Yes, thank you for also differentiating some of the different branches, right, of, as you said, business, which for me, that was the confusing part, right? The Hollywood aspect of it, we can say, and really what it's about. And from what I understand, the science and wisdom of Kabbalah is really a mastery of yourself in connection to the creation itself. The other question that I have, what does Kabbalah say about living in a simulation, us? Our reality being a simulation.
Our reality is, according to Kabbalah, our reality is the upper world. We exist in the upper world. That's on the one hand. On the other hand, it's not true according to our perception. And Kabbalah is very realistic. So it's not that I need to imagine that I'm already in the upper world and everything is already good and it's great. No, really, everything's good. No, if I look clear-eyed, maybe not yet on my doorstep, but a few blocks down, let alone in some other countries, it's a very hideous world. And Kabbalah says that I can't close my eyes and just live in bliss, because then it will come to my doorstep. Because all of the world, all of nature is the creator's language, that for now it's far, but I'm supposed to take these far things, these threats, as an awakening. But what are we doing in this world? What kind of good life have we created with all of our science and technology? We should know how to create governments now and feed everybody, but we can't. We create way too much food and throw it all away while people starve. And each and every human endeavor is like that. And so Kabbalah says that, no, I need to be realistic about the world that I'm in. And I'm not far from, because I'll be really sad if I'm really clear-eyed about everything. I'll just be depressed if I read every single piece of news. But Kabbalah says, I'm not far from actually inverting this whole vision of pain into a corrected vision. I am thus living in actually an imaginary reality. Our world is considered at the bottom of, and not even really part of, 125 spiritual degrees, or 5 worlds. And we're at the very bottom, and even in an imaginary reality. And it's imaginary for a variety of reasons. And we can come out of it. We can enter that beautiful upper reality. So on the one hand, you can say it's a kind of simulation because it's simulating something that cannot be. There cannot be a world in which the creator created sadness. It's all a manifestation, a simulation, if you want. It's a simulation of what the world looks like if I look at it through the ego. And if I look at it through the ego, which is my operating system, then I'm going to see all kinds of forms of the uncorrected will to receive. If I would correct them, each one, I would gradually see that this world disappears and becomes Ein Sof, the upper reality.
So this then we can say is the reality of correction. It's the reality of expansion through realizing perhaps some of the disconnect that has been created in order for us to come closer to the creation itself.
It's exactly that. So it's exactly that the creator shows me all of my desires, which are you and all of humanity and even the still vegetative and animate. All of these parts are actually desires that are in me that, and scientists are also coming to this, by the way, that what lies before me is really a simulation. We'll just continue using that word. A simulation that shows me kind of under a microscope all of the desires that exist in me. They're all desires to receive at the expense of, well, it doesn't really matter who. I want to receive. And these are all the kind of desires that I have. And if they're in me, they're good. There's nothing wrong. It's part of me. But if I live in a world of all of these desires to receive, then I see what we see in our world, and it's not a good world. And then I have to think about my relationships with others. Mm-hmm. And all that was created was this singular desire. We're actually all one. We're not separate. We're having this dream, this imagination that we're divided into these different parts, that we're distant from one another. And this is called the shattering. This is called the shattering of the singular desire. In the connection between all of the parts, all they have to do is connect. In the connection between them, what's felt? The upper light, which we can call creator, infinite goodness, infinite whatever you want, meaning literally whatever you want. Every single desire has what it needs in the perfect way, and not in a way, like I said before, like a short circuit where you try to connect it and boom, the light goes out and you feel blackness, darkness. No, but a way that it's possible to infinitely receive. And so therefore, all there really is to do in humanity is connect. If the kli, we call it, the desire, if this cup is together, then it's as if the wine or whatever you want in there is already inside of it, fulfilling it. If it's shattered, it appears as it appears to us now.
So would you say that it is our, I guess, free will to learn how to receive? Because I think it's one of the hardest things for human beings to do is to surrender to receiving versus trying to manipulate and constantly act on the, you could say, desires, maybe it's impulses, but it's about aligning the intent with the free will to receive.
There's something in what you're saying that's very deep, which is that we do need to learn how to receive. And we learn this in the wisdom of Kabbalah, that in the upper worlds, at first, there was the fulfillment of the desire with the light. And what the desire felt, we're talking about before our world where it's just this desire and the creator and nothing else in creation. And what it felt as the light started filling this desire is that it filled it up, it filled it up. And at the end of it, let's say I'm like a prince in a king's palace filled with all of the goodness, symphonies playing, foie gras, I don't know, whatever you want there. And in the end, though, I discover that I'm not just in this pleasure palace, but there's someone who's giving it to me.
Mm.
And then I start to discover who this person is, meaning it's someone who's not only this pleasure tower that's giving me all of the pleasures, but there's one other thing. And this is what I have a problem with. He loves me.
Mm.
And this I can't return to him. I can't be equal with him. I can receive everything. Okay. And he also wants me to receive everything, but he also loves me. But he made me opposite, such that I'm incapable of this. So I need to learn, and this is why we cascade through down all of the worlds to our world, is just for this one thing, that I need to learn to love.
Mhm.
And that is the only problem, is that that is the opposite of my nature. And it's so simple. It sounds so simple that I could almost do it in the next moment, right? If over all of my desires, all I need to do is drink it. But what was I doing? What were we talking about? The pleasure actually cancels my ability to think about who's giving it, about the purpose of creation. And that's just a coffee. If there are pleasures that are much greater, Kabbalists say that all of the pleasure that has ever been experienced in all of humanity, in all of our history, all of that is considered a spark. And what a person experiences in spirituality for the first time is light, for the first time in all of human history. So, and then there are pleasures and pleasures, spiritual pleasures, much greater and more inclusive than anything we experience here. And much more sexy, seductive, delicious. And so how am I going to, if I even forget over the coffee, how am I going to remember the creator, the giver of this pleasure each time? So for this, we have the problem of developing this masak, this screen. What develops it? It's not a tool that I already have in my pocket. I don't actually have this tool. It sounds like I could just do an intention right now, but how do I develop it? This is actually the whole process, because just like in the womb, let's say, my membranes that are letting me feel are being developed by what? Not by scientists. Scientists don't know how to develop the baby in the womb in a specific order, a little bit of the brain, a little of the ear, a little of this, a little of that. We don't know how to develop this. It's really like a miracle each time, even though it turns out to be a scientific process. But really, there's a force greater than us that is developing this, that is causing evolution, that is making these cells decide to merge with those cells. And this fish, to start doing something other than all of the other fish do. And this monkey deciding to come down from the trees. There's a force in nature. And we can actually refer to this developmental force as the creator. And we can appeal to him in our desire by learning what is the direction of creation. Where are we supposed to be headed? Now, I can pray. People pray all the time for wings, and I can start flapping my arms, right? Hoping that by flapping and flapping, I'll turn into a bird. Well, that's not what I'm destined for in the program of creation. But there are things that I am destined for. And that if I start yearning towards those things, the creator, this upper force, is like a parent that says no to each and everything. But until you ask me for a physics book, when you ask me for a math book, oh my God, yes, here's a 30-volume set, whatever you want. The wallet's open. So the creator too here, if I start longing towards his revelation, through the connection with others, through fixing this broken, shattered Kli, if I start longing for the correction of humanity, this force is ready to give me this. And it does this. So this is how we develop the screen. It's through an upper force. It's through the texts of the wisdom of Kabbalah. It's through the method of the wisdom of Kabbalah. It's a special method through which I bring these particles together, and then the light works on these particles.
Beautiful. What does the wisdom of Kabbalah say about, let's say, the goodness that we know, but also the evil? Does evil exist? We know that, at least in this reality, we can experience it. But as a creator, I assume this is something, well, also some of the work that we've done, it's part of the creation itself as well. What does the wisdom of Kabbalah say about that?
So there was once a religious Orthodox wedding in Petah Tikva where the Kabbalist Rabash was sitting next to a religious fellow like him, and he said to Rabash, he said kind of secretively, mysteriously, he said, I heard that the creator also created evil. And the Rabash turned to him and said, I heard that the creator only created evil.
Mm.
So it's written in the Torah, it said, and created darkness. This is what was created.
Mm-hmm.
Because creation is considered outside. It has a Hebrew root that refers to outside, meaning outside of the creator. What is outside of the creator? Well, the creator is the quality of pure absolute bestowal. What's opposite to that? The quality of pure and absolute reception. So this is darkness, meaning this is an empty Kli, because what a desire, if I can fulfill it with a cocktail, with a beautiful vacation, if I can fill it, it's beautiful. Oh, filling it. If I have an empty desire, meaning I have somebody that I love, but they've left me and I'm longing for them, but they will never be back, that's darkness. So to create a Kli that is empty, and this is a Kli we're talking about that includes all of the desires that can ever be and ever will be. Imagine them empty, empty, empty. So this is darkness, but he created it so that he could fill it, but with our participation. So that's the whole gap here, is the with our participation, that creating a Kli to fill, like before a meal, I'm very excited that I might even skip lunch if I'm going to a special restaurant. I want the deficiency. And if I know I'm going to eat at the French Laundry tonight, I'm actually happy that, it's lunchtime and I'm hungry. I'm getting hungrier and hungrier. I'm excited about this deficiency. I want to arrive there so empty. But this is a joyful adventure then, that I'm driving up to Napa, and until we'll get there, we'll talk about how we're going to eat it. And so in this way, even the process of the wisdom of Kabbalah before we reach the fulfillment becomes like this beautiful adventure, that I'm excited, and I see these different kilim, these vessels that are gonna be filled, and even that is as fulfillment. So there's a way that a person very quickly can get into this kind of joyful and exciting process, that I don't already have to reach the end of correction, right? The journey becomes part of the joy.
This makes sense. Beautiful.
So our problem in our world is that we don't see this goal, right? If I would know what was lying ahead of humanity, the greatest gift that can ever be, and that there is no time. We know from physics, time is an illusion. And really, as far as the creator is concerned, there is no time, no limitation. It's written that one can complete their correction in 15 minutes, and there's one who completes it in an hour, and so on. And we can stretch it for billions of years. The creator doesn't need to finish the creation. He can destroy this humanity and have a new humanity. If we would know that lying before us without any limitations on when, that we can really tomorrow see an absolute change in our reality, that with just a few tiny steps towards connection, towards the correction, everything can work out, everything can clear up, then we can already feel joyful about this process. It's not knowing where I am and why I'm here that actually creates all the pain.
Yes, this is such an important step, I think, because now more than ever, with all of the information that we're given, humanity in many ways are seeking for what I like to call the spiritual bypass. They want to get to the end result without understanding the journey itself. And I'm very curious what the wisdom of Kabbalah says about the spiritual bypassing. The psychedelics are up as some of the most popular things for people to experience these alternate states of consciousness. And again, it's being hooked to that. And what is the journey, and what does the wisdom of Kabbalah say about such experiences that people are so driven to have at the moment?
That ever since we came down from the trees and we went into the caves, there was nothing that occurred except a spiritual bypass to bypass what we need to do, which is actually can be gone through, the correction can be gone through as a fractal. That if I were to do the correction, which is just to do this correction towards some counterpoint outside of me. It has to be towards something outside of me because the kli, the vessel, it's broken. And I have to start having this relationship towards something outside of me, which then turns out to not really matter towards what it is towards, because anything outside of me is actually the creator. And so I could have just in that cave, without going to all of the technology and science, we think we really value it, and I'm also educated and I love learning and all of that. And I really appreciated culture and everything like that. But all of these are essentially a spiritual bypass. Everything that we've done is to confuse ourselves with some poetry, with some systems, some government. Let's try this, let's try that. And we come to our times where we see that it all really adds up to nothing. And of course, and it's all to distract me. Let me just distract myself with some football and a beer. Why? Because by this, I don't think about the meaning of my life. I don't think that's the worst thing you can say to me is, what is the meaning of your life? Oh, what? I need to accomplish something here. So everything is a distraction. That's why we love these phones. Ping, 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 distract. So stimulate, stimulate, stimulate. It's just so that I am constantly distracted. And that's how you keep, bread in circuses. That's how you keep the population happy, keep them distracted. And drugs, you mentioned, this is just it's the ultimate realization. It's kind of smart, actually. Instead of the fact that I need to go buy a Ferrari, because when I have this hunk of metal, it'll ultimately internally stimulate some cells in my brain, and I'll go, ah. So I'll work my whole life just to reach that, ah. So somebody who goes to drugs, they realize, I don't need anything. I don't need my family. I'll steal from my own mother as long as I get that. So it's the discovery that all I need to do is activate these chemicals and I don't need anything in this reality. I'll give it all up. So spiritual, it's not spiritual. It's the feeling of pleasure, but actually never arriving at the pleasure, because there's a law over the whole of reality called simsum. It's restriction. And it's, as Rabbi Akiva says, a blanket covers the entire reality. This law is that you can never receive directly. So this is part of the imagination that we're having, that by this drug, the next dose, no, the next one, I'll finally receive it. But I'm given a limited body that when I finally get to that dose that I've been looking for, my body dies. It can't. So there, this way or that way, there's a law that you'll never receive, not by the Ferrari, not by the nothing. There's nothing. All I can do is come into the proximity of the pleasure, but then the two forces in the light bulb connect directly without a screen, without a filament, and blackness. And that's our whole life, from short circuit to short circuit. So again, we come back to the fact that none of these bypasses are going to work, because ultimately I need to do what is in my nature, which is to receive everything. But I have to first work on this correction of the screen of, why do I want to receive this? Does it bring us closer to the correction of all of humanity, towards the fulfillment of all of humanity in a beautiful upper world, upper connection with the creator? If not, then I need to question, why receive? It's just going to lead me to blackness anyway.
Thank you for bringing that clarification from the perspective of the Kabbalah. That's actually the conclusion I also came to a couple of years ago, after doing some of the investigation that we've been doing, reading the human biofield, after many, many people who've shared their experiences, and we can actually see beautifully through the numbers. And now I want to go back into the mathematics of the science of Kabbalah. And I don't know what it says, but I remember watching this one video, and there's actually a published theory by mathematicians that was done, that the book of Torah is the only complete book. Basically, it's a book of Revelation that has everything written in it. Have you ever seen that study?
No.
No. I know Greg Braden shares this, and there's a book that's written about it. So that's why I asked you, because I thought, as a mathematician, perhaps this is something that you might want to look into, the code of the book of Torah. But I'm wondering if there is a mathematical code, and if perhaps the Hebrew alphabet was not created by human beings, but it was given to us by the creation itself, by the creator itself, perhaps as structure, maybe, that holds this reality, this experience. You can say matrix in a way, right? Maybe that's what is holding it together. What do you think about that connection, the Hebrew alphabet and the structure of our reality?
All of the math comes from, and all of the shapes, they come from the spiritual roots. And what can I say about it? There were Kabbalists who were mathematicians. The Vilna Gaon is known for having written a book on geometry. There was a hidden Kabbalist who is known as Isaac Newton. He was the inventor of integral calculus. And actually, if you look at his math, like his principles of mathematics, which there are probably only a few people in the world that actually understand it even today. It's kind of vexing, because it's, mathematicians say it's strange that it's as if there's no pre-work. It's like you have a fourth grader that he completes a math test without showing any work. The math teacher knows this is impossible. There's no way you did this. And he's coming to all of these calculus. He's inventing a math without seemingly any pre-work, any false starts. And this is because he's able to put these principles down, and also some of his science, from what he attained in the upper world. Because all of the principles a Kabbalist discovers, all of the principles of math, all of the wisdoms, all of the history, he could also be a great historian on the very first spiritual degree. And it's not that every Kabbalist becomes a Nobel Prize winner, a genius, and starts doing math. But in short, it's possible to simply go by the upper roots and then see how it should be in our world. There's a mathematics behind, as you said, behind all of the letters. There's a number for each letter, and many calculations. And this is why the letter combinations also have a gematria, and there's a wisdom to that. This is very deep, though. This is not like for beginners to, I wouldn't say it's the starting point. It's not good to start with gematria, that you'll all understand it externally and start doing all kinds of calculations, when I actually need to do the very first step inside of myself and discover it backwards, the opposite way, right? I need to discover the upper world and then discover, oh, that's why the numbers exist in that relationship.
Couple of people I want to ask you about. Leonardo da Vinci, was he a Kabbalist?
So let me put it like this, because I don't want to talk here as like a holy sage that can go through the times and look at every single person.
Yeah.
A Kabbalist though discovers, first of all of the incarnations that he's been through. And he discovers this chain of Kabbalists that each performed a correction in the system and turns out to be this transistor through which he can rise all the way back to the first Kabbalist, known as Adam Harishon. So all of this stuff, Kabbalists, first of all, don't like to kind of start explaining all of history. I mentioned Isaac Newton for a reason, but because there are many things, many secrets of history, right, that the creator decided for some reason to keep that part hidden. And you can do a lot of damage by upsetting that, right?
Got it.
But it's good to tell people that if you attain it, you'll discover who was a Kabbalist, you'll know, and you'll discover that whole chain.
Okay, makes sense. Thank you for that. Yeah, I think I've on my own, I've been putting kind of puzzle pieces through history together. That's why I asked you, but I respect your answer. Thank you so much for today. Where can people find you? And if we want to learn the science and wisdom of Kabbalah, where do we begin?
So there's KabUconnect.com. That's where we have beginner courses. And then we have Kabbalah.info, which is a huge resource with just tons of free materials, videos. There's, I think, 30,000 videos there, and all of that's free.
And is it your website is KABU, right? KabU.
Yeah, it's for university, Kabbalah University. So KabUconnect.com.
.com. And is it self-guided kind of learning or interactive?
So there is some asynchronous courses. There's several, kind of a Netflix of Kabbalah, different. So I did one on Kabbalah and quantum physics. There's some interesting ones like that. And then there's also like a sequential step-by-step course that ultimately leads to what we call our graduate environment, which is live lessons. And that's like 4 lessons per week. And you get a Kabbalistic group, and we do Kabbalistic workshops there and actually practice this method with other people.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Gianni, for today. This was a lot of fun.
It was.
Yes, I look forward to definitely diving deeper into it. I've been wanting to, had no idea where to begin. I'm sure there's a lot of viewers who are also very curious. So thank you so much.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.